Hey, Sean Chandler here. At the time of this filming, it is Thanksgiving, so just so you know, I'm thankful for you, for watching, for subscribing, for commenting. It means the world to me. But with all that said, I am going to get into talking about Ewoks the Battle for Endor. So coming up in under a month, Rogue One, a Star Wars story, the first of these standalone spin-off Star Wars movies is coming out. And for some of you who don't realize, back in the 80s, they pumped out two different Ewok movies that were made for TV movies, and they're direct sequels to each other. According to Wikipedia, which I trust with my life, they take place between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. And essentially the plotline of them is a family spaceship crash lands on Endor, and the parents get separated, and so they have to be found. And that's the plot of the first one. And so there's a little girl, Sindel, and her brother are the two main characters. Sindel's really the main character. And then in the second one, and that's called the Caravan of Courage. And in the second one, the Battle for Endor, essentially a bunch of evil marauders come in, attack the village. This little girl has to run off with Wicket. She finds an old man in the woods, and they have to battle the evil marauders to battle for Endor. All right, so let's just get right to it. These are made for TV movies from the mid-'80s, and they feel like it. There are some seriously bad special effects in here. There's some awful acting. There's unbelievably cheesy music. And there's a certain charm to them. So growing up when I was watching these, when I was an actual kid in the 80s, and so saw these around when they first came out. They came on Saturday afternoons a lot, and so I loved them back at the time, especially the second one, Battle for Endor, where there's a bit more action. That's why I'm reviewing it first. And so I just thought they were, that's fun. There's more Star Wars movies when I was a little kid. And as I grew older, I was like, these aren't so good. So I didn't watch them for like the last 20 years. And then I have kids now, so I was like, remember those Ewok movies? I better check those out. And they're kind of difficult to watch. They're kind of difficult to get through. So let's start off with the good. With Battle for Endor, really the big positive for this movie is that it's actually a pretty well structured story with clear motivations leading to the next act of the story. Actions propel the story that makes sense. You understand what's happening and why it would lead to the next event that happens. And it's pretty nicely paced. It's a made-for-TV movie, so it's only about 90 minutes long. And the story keeps going. It doesn't linger in any one plot point too long. And so even as I was watching this movie that I was like, all right, man, this is not aged all that well. It moved quickly. It got to the second act, I was like, and stuff was happening. I was like, okay, I'm engaged enough. And I was like, all right, here's where it's going to start to drag. And it didn't. Around in the middle part where she meets this old man and there's like this cute little sidekicked character guy, I thought it was going to be like, all right, we're going to be here for a while. You're not. You just have just enough stuff to set up the world, the relationship, and then you move on to the next thing. And then I thought that the big finale, I'd kind of forgotten it was called The Battle for Endor while watching it. And so it got to the end, I was like, oh, there's a rescue attempt. That's the end of the movie. It's like, no, that's not the end of the movie. The end of the movie is The Battle for Endor. And so there's actually kind of a reminiscent of the end of Return of the Jedi. Nowhere the scale, quality into that, but there's reminiscent of it. And so it moves quickly. It's not just this slow-paced slog to get through. And I think it would be fair to say, if you're going to make an Ewoks movie in the 80s, I mean, this is the story to tell. This is the structure. This is the flow. On paper, looks like this is a pretty good direction to go with all of this. I gotta say this, it's very much a movie designed for little kids, and it's really, really dark. As I get into spoiler territories, I guess spoilers up on the screen if you care. But so it starts off, and in the first scene, the little girl basically watches her parents and her brother get killed. Not basically, she watched them get killed. And you watch all these Ewoks. This is the opening scene, and it's her dad like, we're getting off this planet soon. And then you hear explosions in the background. War breaks out, and they're shooting people, and she's got a little life meter that tells her which one of her family members are alive. She's like, my brother, my mother. And she runs over to them, and then they end up getting killed. She runs to her dad, and he gets killed. And she runs off into the woods with Wicket like like a 6-year-old kid desperate to survive with just a teddy bear. And she finds an old man that's like, get on out of here. This is dark, dark stuff. Later on, she gets captured and she's put in a cage. And so she's talking to someone, and someone goes, oh, there was a man that had a power source before. And there he is over there. And it's like the partner of Wilfred Brimley. And it's like just bones shackled to the walls, like out of a cartoon, except it's actual bones there. little kid stuff. And the final shot in this, when the bad guy ends up getting defeated, creeped me out. As when I was growing up, I was like, ew, gross. It's not gross at all. It is not icky. When I was a little kid, I would have compared it to the end of like Last Crusade or Raiders of the Lost Ark, when the bad guys die. And that's what my brain associated those two. It's not the same thing as that. But at the same time, as a little kid, it was dark enough and weird enough for me that it weirded me out. I mean, I say all that because it's so dark that I just don't know who the target audience is. Really, in the first 5 minutes of this movie, it just kills all the positive victory of the first film, because the people that got saved are now killed by different people. And then we go on with the story of this little girl that finds a new father in a cranky old man. And that's supposed to be like joyful and happy, but it's a little kid's movie. So when you kill her parents off, that kind of takes some of the joyfulness out of that. But then there's the bad side. And the bad side is that the execution is so dated. There's so much bad acting. The costumes, I mean, they really do look like somebody went down to the local Halloween costume store, bought a couple skull masks, and spent some good time coloring it up, giving it a little bit more life to it. And then just like, it looks like that. And then you just went to Goodwill, bought some old jackets, threw some dirt on them, ran them through the mud, put the skull mask on, tuck it in like this. You can't see it, put eye makeup on. And that's what the special effects in this thing look like. The main actress is this little girl sure, a cute little kid, but can't really act. And she goes, "Wicked, where are you? Noah, where?" The whole movie, she just says everything monotone. Cuteness aside, there's not like a charm to her. She's just like, all right, this is the kid that we got. And when that's your main character that's driving you through it, it's this main kid, and then it's Wicket, played by Warwick Davis. Those are your two main characters. So you've got 13-year-old Warwick Davis, 15-year-old Warwick Davis in a costume, doing, I don't even know what that was. That's not what Ewoks are like. And he can talk. They can talk English in this, or basic as it's called in Star Wars universe. So he's, "Sindel, where are you?" And throughout the whole movie, which is kind of funny because it's so ridiculous. But those are your main characters in this, and so that doesn't work so well. The main bad guy's good enough because so his motivation is that he's trying to get like the power core of their spaceship. And so you think there's these marauders on a primitive planet. That's what they would want. And so that kind of drives it, makes some sense. But it just feels shoddy in everything that they're kind of doing. It feels like the poor man's version of Star Wars. And so when you watch Ewoks as a companion to Star Wars, you compare it to Star Wars, in which case it looks so bad and so dated these days. I think the big problem with the movies is that they feel like they're much more common in feel, tone, and everything to the movie Willow, which was also starring Warwick Davis, also a George Lucas story, but it feels very much like fantasy just set in the Star Wars universe. And so there's magic in it, and there's people like Woo! Doing magic and turns into a bird, and then there's magic water, and then there's magic this, and everything's magic. It's not the Force. And then you're seeing these primitive Ewok creatures, and then these primitive other monsters there. And so it feels very much like a fantasy story that just happens to have people in a spaceship crashed on the planet. And so it feels wrong. It doesn't feel like what you want it to feel like. Beyond that, you get into kind of the characters of it. So the main adult character in the movie Battle for Endor is Wilfred Brimley, called Noah in this. And so I remember him from this movie, from Hard Target as a Cajun that kills people with Van Damme, and then Eating Oatmeal or something like that from commercials back in the 70s and 80s. Not 70s. I don't remember the 70s as I was not born yet. But so he's the main character, and his character doesn't make any sense. Like, it feels like made for TV forced writing. Like, you have to have him have a character arc, and so then whenever the girl first shows up, he has to be the cranky, mean old man. And so he's like, "Get out of here, you don't belong here." And so he kicks him out. And then his cute little animal convinces him to be nicer to them. And so he's kind of nicer to them. And this is a bit spoiler territory in case you're going to watch this and you're scared that this made-for-TV movie from the 80s will be spoiled for you. But so he's stranded there because he's got a spaceship that doesn't have a power core. And a little girl that's a human that speaks the same language as him shows up. And he doesn't immediately go, other humans are here. How did you get here? Oh, my spaceship crashed. And he, whoa, tell me about it, because I've been stranded here for 30 years. Like, he doesn't do any of that. Like, this unfolds throughout, like, the course of, like, 30 minutes of it that, oh, he's stranded here, too, and they're looking for a power core. The Marauders are looking for a power core. The Marauders have her power core. They stole it from her parents, who had a good... And all of this feels like as soon as a human walks in that speaks basic, the Star Wars English language, he would go, save me. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. He's a mean old man that kicks her out. And then he pretends like he's mean and angry. But he's like, leaves food out for his cute sidekick character who can run really fast to go and feed them. And it's just bad writing. It just felt like they could get away with it. And so you just... Here's the plot points we need. All right, we want it to be this angry, cranky old man that doesn't want a little girl around. All right, and then later on, we want it to be clear, oh, here's why he's stranded here. And all the pieces fit together, but it feels like a first draft writing of a story that's well-structured as opposed to a well-crafted one where they go, that doesn't make sense. You know, as soon as he'd see a human, he'd get really pumped about that. He wouldn't send them out the door. His first question would be, where's your dad? Not, hey, get out of here, kid. What are you doing here? So then the big two questions, is there any good nuggets in here for Star Wars fans? And number two, do I recommend? Well, for number one, are there any good nuggets in here? No, there's not. You learn that there's magic in the Star Wars universe, assuming this is canon, which don't assume that. I would assume this is not canon. But if you put it in there, there's magic beyond just the Force going on, and there's fantasy worlds. The closest thing to a big takeaway of like some juicy good bits that you would get out of this would be the idea that Endor is a dangerous world with marauders, giants, monsters, dragon creatures, and Ewoks are these cute little teddy bear creatures, and so they have to learn how to survive, and so they've set traps up everywhere. So one of the plot points that people are like, how in Return of the Jedi did all the Ewoks set up the traps so quickly? They didn't set them up so quickly. They live on a dangerous planet, and therefore they were always there, and they just went to work with the stuff they'd set up to keep themselves alive. That's the closest thing to a nugget, that they live on a dangerous world, and so would have had traps. They would know how to kill things, survive, all of that. That's the closest thing. Do I recommend this? No. I mean, if you're a Star Wars purist and you're just curious, so I'm just curious. Someone will tell me that like Fantastic Four, that one that came out a year ago, awful movie, terrible reviews, people said it was a train wreck, and there was this big backstory to it. So I was just curious, so I just wanted to go see it, to understand what it was, and like just to watch a train wreck of a movie and watch how it fell apart. I'm just curious about that. So if you're a curious Star Wars fan that just wants to know about all the weird things that have been created and things that exist, absolutely check out Battle for Endor. It's just interesting as a thing that exists. And it's not too boring. It's not too good, but it's not too boring. If you're just a movie fan, if you would get annoyed, like, I don't want to watch a boring, bad made-for-TV movie, I don't recommend it. Overall, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. That's a negative review for me. It's not boring, but it's not good either. You're not missing out on this one. It's better than the first one. It moves along quicker than the first film and is a much better structure to it. So if you're going to pick one of them to watch the second one. But overall, I can't really recommend it. So how about you? Have you ever heard of the Ewok movies? Did you grow up watching the Ewok movies? Are you interested in watching it? Do you want to watch it again now that you're older? Tell me in the comment section. These would be a fun one to talk about, because if you're old enough that you saw these growing up, you've got that shared experience that I had of like these weird Ewok movies from the 80s that, you know, I kind of forgot about, and I'm wondering if you did too. Tell me in the comment section. Let's talk about it. I don't want to just talk about Ewok movies. I want to talk about Ewok movies with you. Please join me in the comment section and let's talk about it. But most importantly, if you want the Ewoks to win the battle for Endor, the best thing that you can do is check out these other videos or click that subscribe button. You don't want this evil marauder to get the power core, take over the planet, and kill those cute little teddy bears. Please help us by supporting this channel. And as always, especially today on Thanksgiving, thank you for watching.